When medical educators design a written exam, they usually face a trade-off between two extremes. On one side, you have reliability without depth. On the other, depth without reliability. The multiple-choice question is easy to standardize and grade, but it primarily tests recognition. A student doesn't necessarily need to know the answer, they just spot it among 4 distractors. The traditional essay sits on the opposite end of the spectrum. It asks for depth, but it invites tangential rambling. Because every examiner has different standards, grading these papers is notoriously subjective. The modified essay question, or MEQ, was designed to bridge this gap. It functions as a connected sequence of short answer questions, all anchored to a single unfolding clinical case. This format was pioneered in 1975 by the Royal College of General Practitioners in London. They needed a standardized way to evaluate doctors that mirrored the actual demands of a consultation.
They recognized that a student's readiness for the clinic isn't found in what they can memorize, but in how they reason through a problem as it evolves. To do that, the MEP targets high-level clinical reasoning. Instead of simple factual recall, candidates must actively organize knowledge, interpret lab data, and justify treatment decisions in their own words. It achieves this by mirroring the chronological reality of a hospital. In a real clinic, patient data is rarely complete at the first consultation. It emerges over minutes, hours, or days. In an MEQ, information is revealed in stages, a technique called progressive disclosure. This forces students to commit to a diagnostic path at each step, testing their index of suspicion before objective data is revealed. By introducing the element of time, the assessment tracks how a student's reasoning adapts as new variables emerge, an essential layer of clinical competence. Standard multiple-choice tests come with a built-in 20 to 25% guessing advantage. They also allow for backward queuing, where a detail provided in a later question might inadvertently give away the answer to an earlier one. Because the MEQ requires a constructed response, candidates must independently retrieve and articulate their decisions. They have to build the solution themselves, starting from a blank page. Knowing they will face these scenarios changes how students study. Instead of cramming trivia, they are pushed to build illness scripts, organized mental frameworks that link pathophysiology to characteristic clinical courses. This active generation makes the MEQ highly discriminatory, allowing examiners to separate mature clinical thinkers from low achievers. This data shows the percentage scores for both formats over several academic years. While multiple-choice scores are often inflated by recognition and guessing, the lower MEQ scores reveal a much clearer stratification in student understanding. By stripping away the ability to guess, the MEQ offers a more precise look at who is a safe prospective practitioner and who isn't. Let's look at how these exams are built, using a multidisciplinary dental clinic as our setting. A case might begin with a patient presenting with acute facial swelling. In Stage 1, the student is given a brief vignette and asked to provide telegraphic answers, short bulleted lists of differential diagnoses or history questions, rather than long prose. Once the student commits, the administrative rules take over. In a process called sequential disclosure, the section is locked. They cannot look ahead to see the final diagnosis, and they cannot go back to change their initial thoughts. Because the case follows a single patient saga, it naturally allows for multidisciplinary testing. Stage 1 might involve a diagnosis, while Stage 2 shifts to surgical planning or patient communication. The chronological format requires the student to track the patient's status across different clinical stages. The paper becomes a record of a continuous encounter, where every decision made at 9 a.m. impacts the outcome at noon. On the grading side, objectivity is maintained through hierarchical rubrics. These explicitly separate essential clinical points from those that are merely desirable, ensuring consistency across different markers. They also utilize a killer threshold. If a student suggests a clinically dangerous action, like an incorrect drug dosage, they automatically receive a 0 for that section to safeguard patient safety. Designing this complex exam is time-consuming. Authors audit questions against a checklist of item writing flaws. The biggest danger is a cascading stem, where a later question inadvertently reveals the diagnosis for an earlier one. Because of these structural complexities, fatal design flaws are actually more common in MEQs, appearing 16% of the time compared to just 12% in standard multiple-choice tests. A well-designed MEQ measures active reasoning, not passive memory. Its success depends on the discipline of the architecture, locking the door behind every choice.